14 Stoic Principles to Build Self-Discipline. Marcus Aurelius Stoicism. You are losing a war inside your own mind. You clicked on this video because you are exhausted from relying on motivation. You watch a video, you feel a surge of energy. You swear tomorrow will be different, and then tomorrow arrives. The alarm rings, the cold air hits your face, the motivation vanishes entirely. You are left with the exact same lack of control that has been holding you back for years. Motivation is a fragile, unreliable emotion. It is a fleeting chemical reaction in your brain that abandons you the moment things get difficult. The ancient Stoics understood this fundamental flaw in human nature thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius did not rule the greatest empire on earth because he woke up feeling motivated every day. He faced plagues, endless wars, and betrayals from his closest allies. He ruled Rome, and more importantly, he ruled himself through relentless, unfeeling, unbreakable systems of self-discipline. We have been lied to about what discipline actually means. Modern culture tells you it is about punishing yourself, grinding until your spirit breaks, and relying on pure, brute willpower to force your way through life. That is nothing but a recipe for inevitable burnout. True Stoic discipline is not a punishment. It is the ultimate form of freedom. It is the absolute liberation from your own destructive impulses, from the worthless opinions of others, and from the chaotic unpredictability of the world around you. Epictetus taught us that if you cannot control your own mind, you are a slave to everything outside of it. You are nothing but a puppet reacting blindly to every inconvenience, every sudden craving, and every emotional whim. To stop being a puppet, you must cut the strings. To break this cycle permanently, we must look at the forgotten doctrine of Chrysippus of Soli, one of the most brilliant foundational minds of early Stoicism. Chrysippus presented a powerful concept that completely shatters the modern illusion of willpower. Imagine a cylinder and a cone placed at the top of a steep hill. If you push them both, they will both begin to move. But the way they move down that hill is entirely dictated by their inherent shape. The push is the external event. It is the stressful day at work, the sudden temptation, the unexpected tragedy. The shape of the object represents the structure of your mind. You have absolutely no power to stop the world from pushing you. The world will constantly push you with stress, with profound exhaustion, with endless digital distractions. But if your mind is shaped like a chaotic, undisciplined cone, you will wobble, crash, and stop abruptly the moment you face friction. If your mind is meticulously shaped like a perfectly formed cylinder, you will roll forward smoothly, using the very momentum of the push to propel yourself forward. Self-discipline is not about pushing yourself harder. It is about reshaping the cylinder of your mind. It is about building a psychological architecture so solid that doing the hard thing becomes your natural, undeniable momentum. Today, we are going to reshape your mind. We are going to forge your cylinder using 14 distinct, battle-tested principles drawn directly from the greatest Stoic minds in human history. We will not discuss the same tired, superficial advice you have heard 1,000 times before. We are going deep into the raw, uncompromising doctrines of men who faced exile, deadly poison, slavery, and brutal war, and emerged completely unbroken. Prepare yourself, because the first step in this complete transformation begins not with your grand ambitions, but in the most fundamental, daily choices of your physical survival. The greatest battlefield for self-mastery is not a grand political arena or a bloody war zone. It is your dining table. Musonius Rufus, one of the most uncompromising Stoic teachers, understood a profound psychological truth. If you cannot conquer your own stomach, you cannot possibly conquer your own mind. We live in an age of instant gratification, where everything around you is engineered to hijack your receptors and weaken your resolve. Every single day, multiple times a day, you are presented with a choice between brief, meaningless pleasure and long-term virtue. When you choose the heavy, indulgent path simply because it provides temporary comfort, you are actively training your brain to surrender to its lowest impulses. You are telling your own subconscious that immediate comfort is far more important than enduring strength. How can you expect to build a legacy, endure a severe hardship, or hold fast to your deepest principles when a simple craving completely shatters your discipline? Musonius Rufus taught that the daily routine of eating is the most frequent and accessible training ground for the human will. By intentionally choosing the simpler option, by stopping your intake before you are entirely full, you secure a vital daily victory over your raw desires. You remind your physical body exactly who is in command. This is not about deprivation or punishing yourself without reason. It is about proving to your own consciousness that you are an emperor of your own actions, not a slave to your senses. The next time you sit down, look at the choice in front of you. Ask yourself if this serves your higher purpose or if it merely pacifies a fleeting urge. Master your basic hunger, and you will undeniably begin to master your entire existence. The discipline forged in these small, quiet moments transfers immediately to every other monumental challenge you will face in life. But mastering the physical body is only the beginning. Once you have conquered your internal cravings, you must forcefully turn your attention to the invisible, unglamorous work that truly builds an empire. We live in an era heavily intoxicated by the relentless pursuit of applause. You are constantly told that if your hard work is not seen, validated, and praised by the masses, it somehow lacks value. You want the grand title, the public recognition, the immediate reward for your efforts. But true Stoic discipline is forged in absolute silence. Consider Cleanthes of Assos. Before he became the head of the Stoic school, he was a massive, imposing man who worked in the dead of night. He literally carried heavy water pots to water the gardens of Athens just so he could afford to study philosophy during the day. He did not seek glory. He did not complain about his circumstances. He embraced the grueling, invisible labor because he knew that the work itself was the reward. Your ego demands an audience, but your discipline requires isolation. When you perform the menial, boring, repetitive tasks without a single soul watching, you are building a fortress of character that no external validation could ever construct. You are proving that your commitment to excellence is not dependent on a fragile foundation of external praise. Why do you need someone to tell you that you did a good job? Your duty is to perform the action with absolute precision, regardless of who is looking. If you cannot execute the smallest, most insignificant chore with total dedication, you will inevitably collapse when the weight of true responsibility is placed upon your shoulders. Wash the dishes with the same intensity as you would build an empire. Organize your workspace as if you were commanding a legion. Find profound dignity in the invisible grind. When you detach your effort from the expectation of a reward, you become completely unstoppable. You eliminate the friction of seeking approval, and you channel all of your raw energy directly into the execution. But executing tasks with physical endurance is only half the battle. Your mind is a fortress under constant siege, and to truly build discipline, you must learn the precise psychological tactic used to obliterate the most sudden, overwhelming urges. You are trapped inside the claustrophobic prison of your own immediate perspective. Every time you feel a sudden, overpowering urge to abandon your work, to give in to a destructive habit, or to lose your temper over a minor inconvenience, it feels like the most important thing in the universe. Your brain tricks you into believing that this fleeting craving is a monumental crisis that must be satisfied immediately. Marcus Aurelius faced the crushing pressure of ruling an empire, dealing with treacherous generals, and surviving a devastating plague. How did he maintain absolute, unbreakable discipline when everything around him was collapsing? He utilized a devastatingly effective psychological weapon known as the cosmic zoom. Whenever he felt overwhelmed by anxiety or temptation, he forcefully detached his mind from the immediate moment. He imagined his soul rising above his physical body, looking down at his palace, then his city, then the entire Roman Empire, and ultimately the vast, spinning globe of the earth. He visualized the endless expanse of time, the generations of men who lived, fought, and died before him, and the infinite abyss of eternity that would follow. When you zoom out to the cosmic scale, the suffocating intensity of your craving instantly evaporates. Your overwhelming desire to sleep for another hour, to check your phone instead of working, or to lash out in anger suddenly appears incredibly pathetic. You realize that you are a tiny speck in a massive, indifferent universe, and your immediate urges have absolutely no significance. Why would you sacrifice your long-term potential for a meaningless impulse that will be forgotten in an hour? The next time your discipline falters and your mind screams for comfort, force yourself to step out of your own head. Look at your life from the perspective of eternity. The obstacle in front of you is microscopically small. The temptation is completely irrelevant. By mastering the cosmic zoom, you destroy the illusion of importance that your urges rely on, and you regain absolute control over your actions. But shifting your perspective is merely a defensive maneuver. To truly conquer the chaos of your mind, you must learn exactly how to interact with the uncontrollable events that happen to you every single day. Every single day, you are handed situations entirely designed to derail your progress. A project collapses. A sudden expense drains your resources. Someone you trusted deeply betrays your confidence. Your immediate instinct, heavily conditioned by a weak society, is to grab the handle of victimhood. You complain about the unfairness of the world. You let the anger fester and destroy your focus for the rest of the day. Epictetus, a man who endured the unimaginable brutality of slavery and still emerged as a master of his own reality, taught a doctrine that completely neutralizes this destructive reaction. He stated that every single event in your life comes with two distinct handles. One handle represents frustration, anxiety, and a complete loss of control. If you grab that handle, the situation becomes impossibly heavy and crushes your discipline. You become a passive victim reacting blindly to the chaos around you. The other handle represents reason, resilience, and the opportunity for immediate growth. If someone insults you, the first handle is taking offense and losing your temper. The second handle is realizing that their opinion is completely irrelevant to your character, allowing you to walk away with absolute emotional dominance. When a crisis strikes, you are standing at a crossroads of psychological control. You have the ultimate power to choose exactly how you carry the burden. Stop grabbing the handle of despair. When the unexpected friction of life hits you, pause for a fraction of a second and intentionally reach for the handle of discipline. You choose to view the obstacle as strict training for your mind. You extract the lesson and immediately discard the emotion. Mastering this specific choice guarantees that no external event can ever dictate your internal state. But choosing the right handle is only effective if you know how to shield your mind from the crushing weight of unfulfilled expectations. You are exhausting yourself by trying to command the uncontrollable. You pour your blood and sleepless nights into a vision, and you demand a specific reward. When the universe inevitably disrupts your plan, you shatter. Your discipline crumbles because your drive was entirely attached to an outcome you never possessed. The ancient Stoics recognized this trap and developed a mental fortress known as the reserve clause. It is the absolute, unyielding commitment to action combined with total detachment from the result. You declare to yourself, "I will execute this mission flawlessly, fate permitting. I will achieve this victory if nothing prevents me." Why is this the ultimate secret to unbreakable endurance? Because it completely destroys the crippling fear of failure. If your singular goal is to perform your duties with perfect precision, you can never truly fail. The outcome is the business of the cosmos, but the effort is entirely yours. You focus all your aggressive energy strictly on the process. You work with surgical focus. But the moment the task is complete, you release it completely. If you face ruin despite your absolute best efforts, you do not despair. You calmly accept that the outcome was dictated by nature. Your internal discipline remains completely untouched. You are liberated to act with devastating efficiency right now. Master this clause, and burnout becomes a literal impossibility. But mastering your internal expectations is merely preparation. You must now learn to forge an impenetrable armor against the most toxic force in the modern world, the relentless judgment of the crowd. You are completely paralyzed by the fear of looking foolish. You have incredible ambitions, but you refuse to take action because you are terrified of what ordinary, undisciplined people might say about you. Social friction is the absolute destroyer of modern discipline. You abandon your goals the second you feel the crushing weight of public judgment. Cato the Younger, a political powerhouse known for his inflexible moral integrity, recognized this devastating weakness in human psychology. He intentionally walked through the busy streets of Rome without shoes. He deliberately wore tunics of an unpopular, unusual color. He did not do this because he lacked wealth or sanity. He did this specifically to train himself to endure the laughter, the whispers, and the mockery of the crowd. He was forging an impenetrable armor against ridicule. He knew that if he could train his mind to remain completely undisturbed by the harsh judgments of strangers over something as trivial as clothing, he would be entirely immune to their opinions when he had to make monumental decisions for the Republic. You are letting the fear of being perceived as awkward or strange dictate your entire existence. You skip the gym because you fear looking weak. You hide your true opinions to fit into a group of people you do not even respect. The Stoic path demands that you actively seek out the discomfort of being judged. When you intentionally expose yourself to ridicule and realize that the mockery cannot physically harm you, you unlock a terrifying level of freedom. You must train yourself to become completely immune to the opinions of the mob. Wear the strange clothes, ask the foolish question, fail publicly, and stand back up with absolute indifference. Once you shatter the chains of social validation, your discipline becomes unstoppable because it is driven solely by your own internal compass. But shedding the fear of the crowd is only one side of the coin. To guarantee your discipline survives, you must ruthlessly evaluate the exact people you permit to enter your inner circle. You are poisoning your potential by tolerating the presence of weak minds. You believe you can build an iron fortress of discipline while surrounding yourself with people who celebrate comfort and actively avoid hard work. Seneca the Younger delivered a brutal warning that most modern individuals completely ignore. He stated that the mob is the absolute ruin of character. You cannot absorb the habits of an undisciplined crowd without becoming infected by their exact weakness. You subconsciously adopt their low standards. You begin to justify your own failures because everyone around you is failing just as miserably. Isolation is not a punishment. It is a highly tactical tool for massive psychological growth. When you cut ties with the constant noise of average individuals, you create a profound vacuum, In that silence, your discipline is allowed to expand without the relentless friction of mediocrity dragging you down. You must become incredibly ruthless about who you allow into your inner circle. If a person does not elevate your standards or challenge your logic, they are an active threat to your self-mastery. You cannot rescue a drowning man if he is actively pulling you under the water. Protect your mind by retreating into intentional solitude. Build your systems in the dark. Once your discipline is an impenetrable fortress, you can re-enter society without being corrupted by its chaotic influence. But mastering your environment is only the setup. Now we must reach the ultimate culmination of Stoic discipline, the profound realization of exactly what role you are meant to play in this massive theater of life. You spend your entire life complaining about the cards you were dealt. You look at others with intense jealousy, wishing you had their wealth, their genetics, or their seemingly effortless success. This constant comparison is completely destroying your ability to focus on the only thing that actually matters. Panaetius of Rhodes introduced a concept that utterly shatters this weak mindset. It is called prosopon, the theory of the role. Imagine the universe is a massive, incredibly complex theatrical production, and nature itself is the director. You do not get to choose the script. You do not get to choose whether you were cast as a powerful executive, a struggling student, an emperor, or a street sweeper. Your singular duty, your absolute focus, is to play the exact role you have been assigned with terrifying, unrelenting perfection. When you complain about your circumstances, you are merely an actor throwing a tantrum on stage while the universe watches you fail. True discipline is looking at your current situation, no matter how brutal or deeply unfair it feels, and deciding to execute your daily duties flawlessly. If you are a parent, be the most resilient, immovable foundation for your family. If you are cleaning floors, clean them with the intense precision of a master craftsman building a grand cathedral. You must stop wasting your raw mental energy wishing for an easier life and channel all of your aggressive focus into dominating the reality standing directly in front of you. You do not define your worth by the grandness of your public title, but by the brutal excellence of your silent execution. You accept your role, and you play it so perfectly that the gods themselves would stop to respect your performance. This is the absolute peak of self-mastery. But understanding this grand theory is entirely useless without immediate, decisive action. Finally, the absolute culmination of this philosophy rests entirely in your hands right now. You have been given the raw, uncompromising blueprint forged by men who conquered empires, survived slavery, and endured the collapse of entire societies. But consuming this knowledge without executing it is nothing more than intellectual entertainment. The true Stoic does not just listen to the theory and return to a life of weakness and distraction. The true Stoic acts with immediate, terrifying precision. You do not need to master all of these principles by tomorrow morning. Attempting to do so will only trigger the very burnout we have just destroyed. You must choose a single point of attack. I challenge you to look at the chaotic reality of your current life and select just one of the doctrines we have discussed today. Choose the victory of the plate if you lack physical control. Choose the armor of ridicule if you are paralyzed by the opinions of the crowd. Choose the reserve clause if you are suffocating under the weight of unfulfilled expectations. Once you make that decision, you must make it permanent. Go down to the comments section right now and publicly declare which specific principle you are going to execute today. Tell this council of modern Stoics exactly how you plan to implement it into your daily routine. By writing it down, you are stripping away the illusion of mere intention and stepping into the brutal arena of true accountability. We will be watching your progress. You have the ultimate power to reshape the cylinder of your mind and become completely unbreakable in the face of modern chaos. The path of discipline is laid out perfectly before you. Now, take the first step and let the fire build you. You are losing the battle before the day even begins. The moment your eyes open, your mind instantly floods with excuses to remain in the warmth and comfort of your bed. You negotiate with your own weakness, trading hours of potential for a few minutes of pathetic, unconscious avoidance. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on the planet, faced this exact same internal rebellion every single morning. He had an army of servants ready to attend to his every need. He had absolutely no external authority forcing him to wake up. Yet he ruthlessly commanded himself to rise, writing in his own private journal that he was meant for the work of a human being, not to huddle under the blankets and stay warm. He understood that the first physical action of the day dictates the psychological momentum for the next 24 hours. If you surrender to the mattress, you are programming your subconscious to surrender to every other obstacle you will face that day. You are telling your brain that comfort is vastly superior to purpose. To build an empire of self-discipline, you must treat the morning alarm as an absolute, non-negotiable command. Do not allow your mind the luxury of a debate. Throw the blankets off your body the exact second you wake up, forcefully breaking the physical comfort that is trying to sedate your ambition. This sudden, violent rejection of comfort is the ultimate declaration of dominance over your physical form. When you conquer the bed, you conquer the primal urge to hide from the harsh reality of the world. You step into the light not as a victim of your own fatigue, but as a conqueror ready to execute your daily duties. But waking up with intensity is only the ignition. To maintain that fire, you must learn to actively invite the very hardships that ordinary people spend their entire lives trying to escape. You are held hostage by the fear of losing your comforts. You cling desperately to your warm showers, your expensive food, and your soft furniture, terrified that one day it might all be taken away from you. This anxiety drains your mental energy and makes you an absolute coward in the face of risk. Seneca the Younger, who was one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the Roman Empire, recognized that this psychological dependence on luxury was a catastrophic vulnerability. To destroy this fear permanently, he practiced a severe form of voluntary discomfort. Every single month, he would spend several days eating the cheapest, most stale bread, wearing rough, unwashed clothing, and sleeping on the cold, hard floor of his estate. He did not do this to punish himself. He did this to stare directly into the face of poverty and ask himself the ultimate question: is this the condition I feared so much? When you intentionally subject yourself to the very conditions you are terrified of experiencing, you completely strip them of their power over your mind. You realize that your physical body is incredibly resilient and that your consciousness can maintain total peace in the most miserable environments. You must actively inject calculated hardship into your perfectly comfortable life. Take the freezing shower when your muscles desperately crave heat. Fast for an entire day when your stomach demands to be fed. Sleep on the hard floor when your bed is perfectly made. By proving to your own brain that you can easily survive without luxury, you completely eliminate the suffocating anxiety of losing it. You become a dangerous individual who can take massive risks, who can speak the uncompromising truth, and who cannot be threatened or manipulated by the removal of comfort. But stripping away the fear of poverty is merely physical training. To truly fortify your mind against the absolute worst, unpredictable tragedies of human existence, you must learn how to fall completely in love with the fire that burns your plans to the ground. You are entirely obsessed with how things should be, and it is making you incredibly weak. You build elaborate plans for your career and your future, and the moment reality shatters those expectations, you completely fall apart. You view obstacles as unfair interruptions to your perfect life, but the Stoics viewed the obstacle as the actual path forward. Marcus Aurelius did not just tolerate the betrayals and the wars that ravaged his reign. He embraced them with a terrifying concept that requires a profound and uncompromising love of your own fate. He wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of absolutely everything that is thrown into it. When you lose a major opportunity or when a sudden disaster derails your momentum, you have a distinct choice. You can play the victim and let the fire consume your spirit, or you can become the fire itself. You must train your mind to look at the absolute worst tragedy in your life and recognize it as the exact friction required to build an unbreakable character. You stop merely surviving your life and you start actively devouring it. You transform every ounce of pain into raw fuel for your ambition. You cease wishing for an easy existence and demand the strength to endure a difficult one. But transforming your pain into power requires a precise mental mechanism. You must learn the exact method to audit your thoughts in real time before they spiral into destructive and irreversible actions. You are completely defenseless against your own mind because you grant immediate permission to every single thought that enters your head. When a sudden urge to abandon your work strikes, you do not question it. You instantly accept the emotion as absolute reality and you act blindly upon it. Epictetus demanded that we practice a relentless mental audit known as testing the impression. He warned his students never to be swept away by the sheer vividness of a sudden thought. When a destructive idea crashes into your consciousness, you must violently halt its progression. You look directly at the thought and you tell it that it is merely an impression, not the undeniable truth of the situation. You are the sole emperor of your internal citadel, and you must stand at the gates of your own mind like a ruthless guard. Before you allow anger to dictate your words or exhaustion to dictate your actions, you demand identification from the thought. You ask if this impulse aligns with your highest virtues or if it is a deceptive trick designed to pull you back into weakness. By creating a fraction of a second of brutal logical space between the stimulus and your response, you completely neutralize the power of your impulsive nature. You stop reacting like an untrained animal and start responding with the cold precision of a master tactician. The thought itself cannot harm you unless you give it your absolute voluntary assent. But guarding the gates of your mind is exhausting if you do not have a supreme metric to measure those thoughts against. You must establish the ultimate standard of your own character. You operate under the catastrophic delusion that you possess an infinite amount of time. You casually delay your greatest ambitions and waste vital hours on entirely mindless distractions because you are completely convinced that tomorrow is guaranteed. Seneca the Younger recognized this specific arrogance as the ultimate enemy of human discipline. He commanded his students to relentlessly meditate on their own inevitable death. Memento mori is not some dark, depressing obsession with the end of your existence. It is the absolute brutal standard by which you must measure every single action you take today. When you internalize the terrifying reality that you could literally cease to exist before the sun sets, your entirely false priorities instantly shatter. The crippling fear of public judgment vanishes completely. The pathetic desire to procrastinate your life's work is utterly destroyed. You suddenly realize that you do not possess the luxury of waiting for the perfect moment to become the person you were meant to be. You must look directly at the tedious, difficult task standing in front of you and ask yourself one uncompromising question. Would you be absolutely proud to have this specific action be your final mark on this earth? Let the heavy reality of your own mortality aggressively burn away everything that is trivial, weak, and undisciplined in your daily routine. Treat every single day as if it were an entire lifetime, and execute your daily duties with the fierce, unrelenting urgency of a commander whose time is rapidly running out. But recognizing your own mortality is only a tactical weapon if you have a massive, unshakable purpose to dedicate your remaining hours toward. You surrender your evenings to absolute distraction. The moment your daily duties are over, you numb your mind with endless screens until you fall unconscious. You refuse to look back at the actions you took because you are terrified of facing your own weakness. Seneca recognized that an unexamined day is a wasted life. He taught that the ultimate safeguard of discipline is the ruthless evening audit. Before you allow your eyes to close, you must put your own character on trial. You become the uncompromising prosecuting attorney against your own mind. You ask yourself exactly what destructive habit you conquered today, what temptation defeated you, and what specific duty you neglected out of sheer laziness. You do not do this to drown in useless guilt. You do this to gather brutal, objective intelligence on your own psychological vulnerabilities. When you expose your failures in the dark, you strip them of their power to hide in your subconscious. You expose the exact cracks in your armor so that you can wake up the next morning and forge them into impenetrable steel. A man who refuses to audit his own behavior is doomed to repeat the exact same failures for the rest of his life. This is the unyielding step of the daily cycle that leads to a true Stoic rebirth. You began the day by violently rejecting the physical comfort of your bed, and you must end it by aggressively interrogating your own soul. You leave absolutely no room for delusion, ensuring that the man who wakes up tomorrow is vastly superior to the man going to sleep tonight. Finally, you are standing at the absolute edge of your own transformation. You have absorbed the profound, uncompromising doctrines of the greatest minds to ever walk the earth. You possess the exact architectural blueprint to rebuild your mind from a chaotic, fragile cone into a devastatingly unstoppable cylinder. But knowledge without aggressive execution is the ultimate betrayal of your own potential. You cannot simply close this video and return to the exact same weak habits that brought you here. You are no longer permitted to claim ignorance as an excuse for your lack of discipline. The era of relying on fleeting motivation is officially dead. The moment of your Stoic rebirth is happening right now, in this exact second. You must make a ruthless, permanent decision. Will you remain a slave to your impulses, entirely dictated by the chaotic opinions of the mob and the unpredictable nature of the world? Or will you embrace the fire, grab the handle of absolute responsibility, and execute your assigned role with terrifying perfection? You know exactly what must be done. The Council of Masters has spoken, but the final judgment rests entirely upon your own actions. Go into the comments below and publicly declare your oath. Tell the world which specific principle you are implementing today to shatter your weakness. By writing it down, you forge an unbreakable contract with your own character. Subscribe to this brotherhood if you are ready to endure the pain of true growth. The path is clear. Now, step forward and conquer yourself. You are leaving the gates of your mind completely unguarded. You allow the chaotic events of the outside world to march directly into your soul and dictate your daily emotional state. Every piece of breaking news, every insult from an undisciplined stranger, and every minor financial inconvenience is granted immediate access to your internal peace. Marcus Aurelius commanded himself to build what the Stoics called the inner citadel. It is an impenetrable psychological fortress constructed entirely within your own consciousness. You must fundamentally realize that your physical body, your wealth, and your public reputation are entirely exposed to the unpredictable attacks of fate. But your mind is a sovereign, sacred territory that absolutely no one can conquer without your explicit, voluntary permission. You must actively train yourself to retreat into this citadel the exact moment the world becomes overwhelmingly chaotic. When the mob is screaming, when your plans are actively collapsing, and when everything you built seems to be failing, you do not panic. You quietly and instantly withdraw into the absolute silence of your own objective reasoning. Inside this fortress, you are completely untouched by the suffocating anxiety of the masses. You evaluate the external damage with the cold, calculated logic of a military general observing a violent battlefield from a highly secured vantage point. You recognize that the external chaos is nothing more than temporary noise. It has absolutely no power to damage your core character unless you willingly lower the drawbridge and invite the panic inside. Stop granting external events the authority to ruin your discipline. By fiercely protecting this internal sanctuary, you guarantee that no matter how severely the world attempts to break you, your self-mastery remains a devastating, immovable force. You are walking completely blind into psychological ambushes every single day because you operate under the dangerous assumption that everything will go according to your plan. You map out your week, you set your alarm, and you expect the world to simply cooperate with your ambition. When the inevitable chaos strikes, when a critical project fails, when a trusted ally turns their back on you, or when a sudden crisis drains your energy, your discipline instantly collapses. You act shocked and completely betrayed by the universe. Seneca the Younger considered this naive optimism to be a catastrophic vulnerability in the human mind. He commanded his followers to practice a devastatingly effective mental exercise known as the premeditation of evils. Before you step out of your door to face the world, you must vividly and aggressively visualize the absolute worst-case scenarios that could destroy your day. You must intentionally imagine the disrespect of a stranger, the collapse of your financial deal, and the complete failure of your immediate goals. This is not a pessimistic surrender to despair. It is the ultimate tactical preparation of a warrior bracing for an inevitable impact. When you mentally rehearse the disaster before it actually happens, you completely strip the event of its power to shock your nervous system. You preload your psychological defenses. When the crisis actually arrives, you do not freeze in panic or abandon your daily duties like an undisciplined coward. You simply nod, acknowledging that you already anticipated this exact friction, and you immediately execute your contingency plan with cold, unfeeling precision. You cannot be surprised by the cruelty of the world if you have already conquered it in your own mind. A man who expects the storm will never be washed away by the rain. By intentionally destroying your own fragile optimism, you forge a level of discipline that thrives in absolute chaos. You are constantly leaking your raw power through your own mouth. You live in a culture that actively rewards endless broadcasting, sharing every minor thought, and publicly debating entirely useless opinions. You operate under the delusion that explaining your massive goals to anyone who will listen somehow brings you closer to actually achieving them. Zeno of Citium, the founding father of the Stoic school, recognized this constant noise as a fatal drain on human discipline. He bluntly stated that nature gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth for a very specific, uncompromising reason. We are physically engineered to listen vastly more than we speak. Every time you open your mouth to complain about your circumstances, to gossip about the failures of others, or to boast about the intense work you have not yet completed, you are bleeding out the exact psychological energy required to execute your plans. You are actively substituting the difficult, invisible work of building an empire with the cheap, immediate dopamine of talking about it. True Stoic discipline demands the ruthless, daily mastery of your own tongue. You must train yourself to sit in absolute silence while the undisciplined masses scream desperately for attention. Do not announce your next move to the public. Do not defend your strict routine to people who are entirely committed to remaining weak. When you lock your grand intentions securely inside your own mind and absolutely refuse to speak them aloud, that trapped kinetic energy has nowhere else to go but directly into your physical actions. Your silence becomes a terrifying, immovable weapon. It forces you to observe the chaotic world, gather vital intelligence, and strike your targets with devastating accuracy. The undisciplined man speaks constantly to convince himself of his own strength. The true master of his own mind lets the undeniable violence of his executed results do all of the talking. Finally, you are standing at the absolute edge of your own transformation. You have absorbed the profound, uncompromising doctrines of the greatest minds to ever walk the earth. You possess the exact architectural blueprint to rebuild your mind from a chaotic, fragile cone into a devastatingly unstoppable cylinder. But knowledge without aggressive execution is the ultimate betrayal of your own potential. You cannot simply close this video and return to the exact same weak habits that brought you here. You are no longer permitted to claim ignorance as an excuse for your lack of discipline. The era of relying on fleeting motivation is officially dead. The moment of your Stoic rebirth is happening right now, in this exact second. You must make a ruthless, permanent decision. Will you remain a slave to your impulses, entirely dictated by the chaotic opinions of the mob and the unpredictable nature of the world? Or will you embrace the fire, grab the handle of absolute responsibility, and execute your assigned role with terrifying perfection? You know exactly what must be done. The Council of Masters has spoken, but the final judgment rests entirely upon your own actions. Go into the comments below and publicly declare your oath. Tell the world which specific principle you are implementing today to shatter your weakness. By writing it down, you forge an unbreakable contract with your own character. Subscribe to this brotherhood if you are ready to endure the pain of true growth. The path is clear. Now step forward and conquer yourself.